All right, now we are going to be talking about what is called standard form and these things called intercepts. So remember, we have been dealing with slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Standard form is a little different. It's written different, and it is ax plus by equals c. Now, the big difference here, if you notice, is in the first one, slope-intercept form, we solve for y. So we get y completely by itself on one side of the equation. In standard form, that is not the case. We have ax plus by equals c. So the x and the y and their coefficients are all on one side. So what is the rules for standard form? Well, we have a couple of them. First one is a, b, and c, the constant, the coefficient for the x, and the coefficient for the y are all integers, which simply means a, b, and c can only be positive or negative whole numbers. There cannot be any fractions or decimals in that to be called standard form. The second rule is a and b both cannot be 0 at the same time. So one of them has to have a coefficient other than 0. Now, we will be talking about more of that next chapter. Right now, we just need to kind of get the familiarity of the two different forms. But next chapter, we'll be using that a lot more as we go. Now, when we look at standard form, we also bring about this concept of intercepts. Now, in slope-intercept form, we talked quite a bit about the fact that we have a y-intercept. And we said that a y-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, we've talked about that. We've even used it when we graphed in slope-intercept. But we also have this thing called an x-intercept. And the x-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. Now, what I want you to really pay close attention to, though, is I want you to look at these ordered pairs. An x-intercept has an ordered pair of some number, comma, 0, because I'm not moving up or down any. I would only move along the x-axis, the horizontal axis. The y-intercept has an ordered pair of 0, comma, some number, because I'm not moving left or right, I'm only moving up and down on the y-axis. Okay, so we are going to be using that concept when we solve and graph using x and y intercepts. So the steps that we're going to use is step number 1, we are going to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept. To find the x-intercept, you simply plug in 0 for y, you solve it for x. To find the y-intercept, you plug 0 in for x, solve it for y. Then what you're going to do is you're going to graph the x-intercept on the x-axis. You're going to graph the y-intercept on the y-axis. And then you simply connect the 2 points. And that is how we are going to graph using intercepts. So we're going to start here on this first one. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to solve for the x-intercept. So the first thing I do is I plug 0 in for y. When I plug 0 in for y, what that would leave me with is 5x is equal to 10. Well, to solve that, I would simply divide by 5, and I would get an x-intercept of 2. Okay, so then I come back and say, okay, well, how do I find the y-intercept? So to find the y-intercept, I plug 0 in for x, and I solve this equation now. So negative 2, divide that to both sides, and you would end up with y equals negative 5. Okay, now to graph this, what I simply do is I come down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I put my dot. That is my y-intercept. Then I come across to a positive 2 on the x-axis, and I put the x-intercept. My last thing is I connect those 2 points, and there is my line. Now, if I were to ask you this next question, though, if I said to you, okay, that's great, but what would the slope be? Well, we could easily find it once we have this by counting from one point to the next. So if I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I went up 5, and then I went 1, 2 over. So my slope would be a positive 5 halves. Okay, you're not going to be asked that every time, but I want you to be able to understand how to find that if you are asked for that. Okay, let's try another one. So on this one, we're going to find the x-intercept first. So the first thing I do is I plug 0 in for y, and I get this equation. 3x is equal to negative 12. I divide by 3 to both sides, so x is equal to negative 4. Then I come back, and now I want to find the y-intercept. So to do that, I plug 0 in for x, and I solve this equation. 4y equals negative 12. So I divide by 4. So y would equal negative 3. So now I come in here and I go to graph it. So my y is negative 3. I put my y-intercept down. I come back. My x-intercept is negative 4. Then I'm going to connect those. And there is my line. Once again, if I asked you to find the slope, remember we like to start at the leftmost point. So I'd go 1, 2, 3. I went down, so that would be a negative. And then I went 1, 2, 3, 4. So that slope would be a negative 3/4. So I just want you to see that you can easily find the slope once you have the intercepts as well. All right, let's try a couple more just to make sure we have it. So here on number 3, we're going to start in and we're going to say, okay, x plus 2y. So I'm going to find the x-intercept first. So I plug 0 in for y. And I get the equation x equals 6. Well, that's really nice because that already tells me that that is the x-intercept. Then to find the y-intercept, remember I plug 0 in for x. And I get 2y equals 6. So I divide by 2. So y is equal to 3. So now I come over here, my y-intercept, 1, 2, 3. I go up 3 and I put a dot. Then I come back and I go over to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I put my point. And then at that, I go in and I connect those. And there is my line. Then if I were to ask you what is the slope, just to keep practicing it, I start at the leftmost dot. 1, 2, 3. I went down 3, and then I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which could simplify to negative 1/2. And that is how we would find the slope, the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and be able to graph it all fairly easily. Okay, let's try this last one then. So on this last one, we start in, we're going to find the x-intercept first. So we plug 0 in for y. I have 2x is equal to negative 8. I divide by 2. So x is equal to negative 4. Okay, then I come back to find the y-intercept. I plug 0 in for x. And I get negative 4y is equal to negative 8. I divide by negative 4. So y is equal to 2. So now I come over here, I put my y-intercept as a positive 2. I put my x-intercept at a negative 4. I connect those points. And there's my line. Now, if I were to ask you what is the slope, we would start at the leftmost point. And I'd go 1, 2. So I went up 2. Then I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. And 2/4 can simplify to a positive 1/2. And that would be how you would find the slope. And that's all there is to it, to find the x and y intercepts and be able to graph them. And there you have it.